Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Classes of Mail. My name is Alan Gigax. And today I want to talk about a topic that is in the headlines, which is the delay of the postmark being put onto people's mail. This has been in the news, and I'm going to tell you guys the straight scoop about how the postmark gets put on the mail and how this has become an issue. And then I'm also going to answer a question that I got in the mailbag about delivering mail to CRMAs, commercial mail receiving agencies, and how we're supposed to handle that mail. And so it involves a dive into the domestic mail manual, which I'm excited about, which will spawn another episode, which I'm even more excited about. But for now, in order to get through this stuff, first we have to talk about this issue where when you're mailing off an outgoing letter, the postmark, you mail it out today, the postmark may not indicate that it was mailed out today. And in some cases, like for legal matters or for mailing off your taxes or for voting, this can be really important. So this is all about the outgoing mail. By the way, here in Las Vegas, we have a slang word for the outgoing mail. We call it green mail. And I wonder if where you are, if it's also called green mail or if it's something that has different names around the country, kind of like how auxiliary assistance is called a handoff or a split or a bump or a piece or whatever. What do you guys call outgoing mail? Is it also green mail? I've also heard it called raw mail. So let me know, classesandmail@gmail.com. Okay, but now to get to this issue of outgoing mail having its postmark date delayed. So our outgoing mail is processed and postmarked by a machine. It's not like in the olden days where there was a human who had a postmark and would stamp it over the stamp, would put the little bopper over the stamp to postmark the date. That hasn't happened in a really long time. And so in that sense, nothing has changed. The outgoing mail for a very long time has been processed by a machine, the Advanced Facer Canceller System, AFCS. Here in Las Vegas at our plant, we call that machine Barney because it's painted purple. And that's another thing that I wondered, is it called Barney all over the place? But I looked at AFCS machines on Google Images, and it turns out, no, they're not usually purple. Ours is purple, so we call it Barney. So I'm going to call it the AFCS, the Advanced Facer Canceller System. And to understand what's happening, we're going to focus on the C in AFCS, the canceling. So what happens is incoming mail gets processed by the AFCS, and at that time, the stamp is canceled and the postmark is applied. So again, this has been happening this way for a very long time, for decades. And so what's with the change? Well, the change has come thanks to Postmaster DeJoy and his Delivering for America plan. So because of the Delivering for America plan, a lot of post offices no longer have an evening truck that picks stuff up from the post office and takes it back to the processing center. So mail that would have been processed today now has to wait until tomorrow when the next truck comes, and that's what's delaying the postmark. So I'll give you an example, and I don't even know if this example is true, but just to illustrate what I'm talking about. Here in Las Vegas, there's a town that's like 30 miles outside of Vegas called Pahrump. Pahrump is where you buy illegal fireworks. It's where Art Bell lived. And it's also where prostitution is legal, if you're interested in that sort of thing. So, and it's the gateway to Death Valley. So anyway, Pahrump is over the hill. We say over the hump to Pahrump. And it's, this outlying community. And so again, I don't know if this is actually true for Pahrump, but this is just for the example. So we have to get all the mail out to Pahrump each day for them to deliver. And so that truck has to leave early in the morning, drive out to Pahrump, and drop off all the outgoing mail. And then it doesn't really make a lot of sense for that truck to come back to the plant empty so it can pick up all the outgoing stuff from Pahrump and bring it back to the plant. Well, then later in the evening, a truck would have to leave Las Vegas essentially empty, drive out to Pahrump, and then fill up with all the outgoing and bring that mail back. So it's not crazy to say why are we making this trip twice a day when the truck is empty on one end of the trip each time? You know, in the morning, it comes back pretty much empty, and in the evening, it goes out pretty much empty. So let's cancel. We can't cancel the morning run because that's today's mail. It's got to go out. So we cancel the evening run, and that saves the trip, and that, you know, saves the post office money. And this is an unintended consequence. You know, this delayed postmark is an unintended consequence of having fewer truck runs. Or maybe it's actually an intended consequence. Maybe it would be fair to just call it a consequence. So this is a consequence of the fewer truck runs in the Delivering for America plan. So you can get around this by just taking your mail into the office, into your local post office, take it to the counter, and have the clerk at the counter apply the postmark. This is a big pain in the ass, of course, and a lot of times there's a line. But if you have to have your stuff postmarked today, then that's the way it has to be done. So theoretically, these delays in postmarking could always happen. You know, if your last truck leaves at 6 p.m. and you don't get the mail into the mail stream until like 6:30, you drop it into a blue box or whatever, then it's not going to get processed till the next day. But there are these service times that, okay, as long as you have the mail in the mail stream by, you know, whatever time, it's going to get processed today. Well, now, thanks to this issue, that's not always happening. And so if you live in a city like here in Las Vegas, we still have a PM truck. And so it doesn't really affect operations here in Las Vegas. If you drop your mail off today, it's probably going to have a postmark of today. But in outlying areas, it's no longer the case, and now it's something that these people have to worry about. Okay, so that's the story with the delayed postmark. That's why that's happening. Now, since I'm already talking about the AFCS, this is the kind of thing that is interesting to me. So I want to talk to you about how the AFCS actually works. Like, what happens when all this raw outgoing mail gets put into the AFCS. So first, the mail gets dumped onto this big, wide belt. And it's a slow-moving belt. And essentially anywhere in the post office where you have a belt full of mail that moves slowly, it's intended for humans. And in this case, humans have to stand over that belt and pick out a bunch of stuff that doesn't belong. Like this mail, you know, when you get back to your station, there's probably buckets or maybe a wire tainer or whatever that has your outgoing raw mail in it. I'm going to call it green mail because that's just what I'm used to. So you may have to translate from green mail. So anyway, when you dump your green mail, anything that doesn't belong in there has to get picked out if it can't be handled by the AFCS. So that means spurs or even bigger parcels for that matter. And more importantly, it means garbage. So if you drop a crumpled up 3849 into your bucket that has your green mail in it, then some poor soul down at the plant has to waste their shift pulling that shit out when it goes across this belt, and candy wrappers and coins and whatever other crap goes in there that doesn't belong. Please, guys, be thoughtful about what you put into that green mail bucket, because what a phenomenal waste of effort for somebody else to have to pick up your garbage because you're too lazy to put it into the proper place where it belongs. You know, please only put letters and flats into that bucket, or only letters, or however it's processed where you are. Okay, so from there, after it goes on this slow-moving belt past the humans, from there is when it drops into the facer. And the facer is essentially a series of belts. So all the letters get pulled in one by one, and there are sensors that can tell what direction that mail is facing, what direction that letter is facing. And so some letters will get diverted to different belts. There'll be belts that are twisted so that it'll flip the letter upside down, you know, flip it the other direction. There are belts that loop around so that if the mail is facing to the left, now it goes through that, and now it's facing to the right. And so these belts, once the mail is oriented in the proper direction so that the stamp is in the upper right, then it gets canceled. So let's see. Okay, yeah. So once it's in the proper direction. Oh, and this machine also kicks out letters that don't belong. Like if they're, not the appropriate size, or if there's too much thickness, because, the AFCS has a thickness for the thickness. So, yeah, it can't handle the stuff that's too thick, and it gets kicked out. But once it's facing the right way, the stamp gets canceled, and then the address is read. And if the mail already has a barcode printed on it, like when you mail your bills back in or something, and they come with that envelope that already has the barcode on it. So if it already has a barcode on it, then the barcode directs the mail from there. If it doesn't already have a barcode on it, then it goes through the optical reader, the OCR, it uses OCR, optical character recognition. So this is where a camera and a computer looks at whatever is written on the envelope and actually reads it. And the post office, our technology is not great, as you know from working here. Anybody who's driven an LLV knows that. But this is one area where the post office is actually a world leader in technology. We really developed that optical character recognition, and it works really well. It can read cursive, it can read, all caps, whatever the way people write their addresses. This machine reads it, and then it prints on the barcode. So once the address is read, but before the barcode gets printed on, something amazing happens. The AFCS, the automatic facer canceller system, checks for forwards or for a move left no address. This is part of PARS, the Postal Automated Redirection System. And this checking of the address to see if there's a forward on file is done in the split second before the barcode gets printed on. And if there is a forward on file, then the AFCS prints the barcode for the new address. And guys, this is huge for the Postal Service. This is a huge time, labor, and money saver for the post office, because you think about, you're sending a letter to grandma and she lives in Hawaii, and so you have the mail written out, her birthday card addressed to her in Hawaii. Well, when that mail goes through the AFCS, it reads grandma's name and address, and it says, oh, grandma has a forward on file. She moved to Ohio. Grandma really should probably move the other direction, but whatever. Maybe it was a cost of living issue. She's on a fixed income, grandma. So anyway, instead of printing on a barcode that sends the mail off to Hawaii for it to then get forwarded from there, the AFCS prints on a barcode that sends the mail to Ohio, and it never has to go to Hawaii. And that's huge. That's so incredibly helpful. So good job, AFCS. That's a really useful thing. And then once that mail gets spit out at the other end of the AFCS, it goes into the appropriate tray and goes on for future processing. And from there, it actually goes to a DPS machine, the digital barcode sorter. At least that's the way it happens in our plant, and I presume it's this way everywhere. And each of the trays that are in the DPS machine, instead of being, for a different route and a different section of that route, your A tray and B tray and whatever, when it's set up for outgoing mail, there'll be a tray that says New Haven, Connecticut, and another tray that says Honolulu, Hawaii, and another tray that says Columbus, Ohio. And those trays get taken to be put on the back of a truck, or they get taken to the airport or whatever. And again, that's that cool thing that instead of your letter to grandma going into the tray that's marked for Honolulu, Hawaii, it goes into the tray that's marked for Columbus, Ohio, and then it gets processed on from there. So that's the AFCS. Oh, and then another cool thing that AFCS does is it has filtering and detection for biohazards, mainly anthrax. And you guys may remember back, I don't know, however long ago now, people, ne'er-do-wells were sending anthrax through the mail, and that's bad. We don't want anthrax in the mail. And so there's actually, if going through the processing jostles it and the spores get, kicked out, you don't want your clerks or your mail handlers to get sick from anthrax. And so there's a vent that sucks all that up, and it goes through filtration so that it, takes out all the anthrax. And then there's also detectors so that the whole thing can be shut down and whoever can come in and decontaminate the facility. So that is the AFCS, and that is why the mail gets delayed. And we still have a little time left because that was only 15 minutes. So now I want to get to my other topic, which is I got a question in the mailbag, and it is about commercial mail receiving agencies, the one-stop drops like a mailboxes, etc., UPS store, places like that, where people can rent mailboxes from them instead of using like a PO box or a regular mailbox. So here's the question. When a CMRA gets ANK or UTF mail, attempted not known or unable to forward mail, what am I supposed to do with it? I recently got a CMRA added to my route and have been trying to do right by them. I learned that CMRA mail customers aren't allowed to forward mail from their mailbox at a CMRA. Should I be doing MLNA for the mail a CMRA gets? I know that's a lot of abbreviations. To stop them from getting so much bad mail. So basically what the carrier is asking is, I'll get mail that's addressed to, the mailboxes, etc., or the UPS store, and that person doesn't receive mail there anymore. So should the carrier be taking any steps to stop this mail from coming? And the short answer to that is no, you shouldn't. Any mail that's addressed to the CMRA, you're going to deliver it to the CMRA. We don't handle any of it. But here on Classes of Mail, we don't just settle for the easy answer. You're not just going to take my word for it that the answer is no. So to find the actual answers, I went to the source. I went to the Domestic Mail Manual and the Post Office's FAQ for commercial mail receiving agencies. So when you get a PMB at a CMRA, the PMB, by the way, stands for a private mailbox. And that's why you'll see on the addresses for them, it'll say, 2510 Sunset Road, Suite 5, PMB 422. That's a private mailbox. More on that address in a minute. So when customers apply for, and this is generally all going to come from this FAQ, if it's from the DMM, I guess it doesn't matter where I got it. Just know that it came from those two things. And this is in the DMM in the 200s, I think it was. Yeah, it must have been in the 200s. Anyway, so when somebody gets a mailbox there, they have to fill out a PS Form 1583, the application for delivery of mail through agent. And every single person who receives mail at a PMB has to fill out this 1583. And that includes like individual people sharing a box. Like if a husband and wife are going to get mail at this PMB, they each have to fill out this Form 1583. If they get mail for their kids, the kids don't have to fill it out, but every person does. And then the CMRA has to maintain a digital copy of the 1583 at the CMRA business location. And I'm going to read what it says. The PS Form 1583 must be available at all times for examination by Postal Service representatives and Postal Service inspectors. So this means that the identity of every single box holder is verified. And that makes me wonder, like, these PMBs are used, the CMRAs and the PMBs are used by scammers, like people running lottery scams or whatever, and they get their mail at the UPS store. And like, how do they get away with it? Because we have a record of whose box that is. Like, they have to show ID and it has to be verified in order to open this box. So I feel like those investigations should be pretty easy to conclude. All right. So anyway, the United States Postal Service delivers all of a CMRA customer's mail to the CMRA, but it is not responsible for putting the mail in the individual boxes. So that's why we call it a one-stop drop. That's what our slang is for it. Because any mail that goes there, it just goes in a big bucket. You drop the bucket off at the front counter. They sign for any accountable items or any signature items or whatever is appropriate. And then you just drop it, and they handle everything from there. So now regarding the address, this again is a direct quote from the DMM. It says addresses must contain PMB or the number sign before the box number. So it should say, the person's name, Jane Smith, PMB 425, 2510 Sunset, Suite 5, Las Vegas, Nevada 89120, or whatever the address is. And the post office, again, reading from the manual here, the USPS may return mail without a proper address to the sender, endorsed undeliverable as addressed, missing PMB or number sign. And this is probably why, if you deliver to a CMRA, so much of that mail winds up as S999 mail. That's the mail that you get that comes out of order. You should get it at your case. And so you get a bunch of mail for this CMRA that has to be cased instead of being sorted into your DPS. Or your DPS, it'll be in your DPS at the front of that delivery. So like when I used to deliver to a CMRA, the one at 2510 Sunset, I would get mail for Suite 1, Suite 2, Suite 3, Suite 4, and then have like a third of a tray for Suite 5, which was the CMRA, and then behind it would be like Suite 6 and Suite 7. But at the front of that tray, before I got to that, as soon as I got to 2510, there would be like 2/3 of a tray that was all S99 mail that wasn't in the proper location because the address wasn't formatted properly. So, okay, so that's that. And then it says, contact the CMRA directly, not the Postal Service, to resolve any delivery issues. So anybody who's getting their mail there, if they have any sort of issue with the delivery of their mail, they have to address it with the UPS store, with the company, not with us. Going on, it says, you must go. Okay, so this is the part that was new to me. And this is what I love about doing these sorts of things for classes of mail, because I know that the CMRA is authorized to receive mail, to sign for things. You get a certified letter for somebody who's at a CMRA. They will sign for it. They sign for everything. However, it says you must go to the local post office to accept registered mail. A CMRA may accept other accountable mail. So all other types of accountable mail you can deliver to the CMRA, to the UPS store or whatever, but you cannot deliver registered mail to there. You have to leave at 3849, and then the customer actually has to come to the post office to pick that up. Registered mail only. So I didn't know that. I always delivered my registered mails to them as well. So good to know. All right, and then it goes on to say mail can be forwarded to a CMRA, but not from a CMRA. So somebody decides they want to stop receiving the mail at their house. They want to pick it up at the UPS store because it's right next to their office or whatever. They put in a forward and the forward goes to the UPS store, no problem. But when they stop receiving mail at the UPS store, they cannot forward their mail from the UPS store to wherever they're going to get it. So here's what happens instead. It says, when the agency relationship between the CMRA and the addressee terminates, neither the addressee nor the CMRA will file a change of address order with the post office. The CMRA must remail mail intended for the addressee for at least 6 months after the termination date of the agency relationship between the CMRA and addressee. The remail of mail intended for the addressee is the responsibility of the CMRA. Mail that is remailed by the CMRA requires new postage. So this is part of the deal. You open a box at a UPS store, and then when you close that box for the next 6 months, they are required to put your new address on that mail, put a stamp on it, and send it back out as outgoing mail. The CMRA must... Oh, I already read that part. Mail that is remailed by the Okay. The CMRA must return this mail to the post office the next business day. Oh, no. If they're not forwarding that mail, if there's no forward put in, no new address put in, or it's undeliverable for whatever reason, then the CMRA must return this mail to the post office the next business day after receipt with this endorsement. Undeliverable, commercial mail receiving agency, no authorization to receive mail for this addressee. The mail is returned to the post office without new postage. The CMRA must not deposit return mail in a collection box. The CMRA must give return mail to the letter carrier or return it to the post office responsible for delivery to the CMRA. So now you get this mail that says no authorization to receive mail for this addressee. What do you do with it? Well, you would put that mail into attempted not known, and then it gets returned to sender through the PAR system. Let's see. Here we go. It is postal policy that only addressees can refuse mail. PS Form 1583 obligates the CMRA to accept its customers' mail. So they can't refuse anything. Anything you give to them, they've got to deal with it. When a customer terminates their private mailbox, their PMB, the CMRA may, but is not required to, notify the post office. So every time that happens, they don't have to, fill out this form. However, CMRAs are required to provide the USPS with a quarterly report of customers who have terminated their relationships with the CMRA. The CMRA must ensure that all its addressees have current PS Form 1583 on file and that information for each addressee is up to date in the USPS CMRA customer registration database. Updates must include termination dates for any PMBs closed in the previous quarter. So every quarter, they let the post office know, hey, this box holder's not here anymore. And that essentially becomes like a move left, no address for that customer. But to the listener's question, if you're getting mail that, already has the sticker on, like if the mail already has the sticker on it that says return to sender, that yellow sticker, then that mail is a DPS error now. That should be return to sender. It shouldn't keep going. Don't deliver mail that already says return to sender on it. That mail needs to be resorted to go back. It's already gone through PARS or CFS or whatever. It already has that yellow sticker on it. But any other mail that goes to that CMRA, you're just going to deliver it. All right. And then the CMRA must certify in the USPS CMRA customer registration database each quarter that every PS Form 1583 it's submitted is current, all termination dates have been updated, and no identification documents are expired. The CMRA is responsible for forwarding their customers' mail for 6 months following PMB termination. USPS cannot process a change of address request from a CMRA to another address. All right, so that's all the stuff from the DMM and from this FAQ about these mailbox places. So, short story is, if it's addressed there, you're going to deliver it there, and that's that. And if you're getting a bunch of S99 mail that's improperly addressed, like in the manual, it gives an example, 2510-422 Sunset Road. That doesn't work. It has to be 2510 Sunset Road, PMB 422 or number 422. Or there's examples in the manual of how the address is supposed to look, but it has to have either PMB or the number sign on it. And if you're getting a bunch of mail that's not being properly sorted, and that's the reason, then you got to get with that CMRA and let them know, like, hey, your mailers have to use their proper address so that the post office can properly sort that mail. All right, so that's today's topic, and thank you very much for that question. I know you sent me a 2-part question. The second question I'm going to have to answer in another episode. But, dude, thanks for that, because that's stuff I was curious about, too. And I hope you guys found that as interesting as I did. And that's all I got. I will catch you all next time.